to the Recappables, a podcast on the Ringer Podcast Network. I'm Amanda Dobbins, the culture editor at The Ringer. Today I am joined by Justin Charity.
Hello.
And Andrew Grodadero.
Hey, what's up?
And we are here to talk about Atlanta, specifically the latest episode called Woods. It was written by Stephanie Robinson, directed by Hiro Murai. And guys, I'm feeling a little emotional.
Yeah, I'm shook.
Dear Gus, that's what I call you. Big old black boy, dear Gus. You're stubborn. You're stubborn and you're black. I'm serious, man. Leave me the fuck alone!
It was a real emotional journey. It was funny and also kind of real talk for the Al character, which we can come back to. And then it got scary, and then it got kind of heart-wrenching there at the end, I thought.
Yeah, it was a little haunting, and when he's stuck in the woods, I just felt so much for Paperboy. I'm very worried for Paperboy at all times.
Yeah, but it's like I'm worried, but at the same time, the episode has this very come to Jesus vibe about it. Mm-hmm. And so it feels like I feel less worried, actually, by the time we get to the end of it.
Now I feel a little bit better.
So, Charity, can you explain the come to Jesus vibe that kind of sets it up?
Well, yeah, I mean, the episode, even just the very beginning of the episode, it's like Paperboy's mom is in the house, and she's like, why is this place so messy? Ern is trying to get him to sign contracts, and he's just being lazy, and he's a bum. Mm-hmm. And so he reconnects with his friend, Sierra, who is this, like, Instagram star. She's like a burgeoning Instagram star. Yeah. And she's, like, happy to connect with Paperboy because they're sort of both in the same, I don't want to say they're in the same orbit. She's more of a model. Paperboy is a rapper, but they both have this sense of people who are on the verge of fame or on the outskirts of fame.
They're at the same level at kind of breaking through in their respective careers.
But she's like way more ambitious and enthusiastic about it, where Paperboy is just like mumbling all the time and doesn't want to rap.
Yeah.
She knows what it takes to be famous.
Yeah.
She knows the games that you have to play.
I'm Instagram famous, boo. I can't be selling my wigs and out here looking janky. I gotta compete with white girls with lip fillers and butt injections, selling lip gloss and spray tan. Shit. Everybody wanna be a black girl, but the black girls ain't making no money from it.
And so their scenes are basically confronting what has been a recurring theme with Al throughout the season, which is his discomfort with fame and his kind of unwillingness, but also I feel like an understandable reluctance to deal with everything that comes with being a successful rapper. He's not really ready. Charity, as you put it, he's kind of whining. He doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to take the selfies. He doesn't want to do the promotions. He doesn't want to go to fake Spotify. He hates Clark
He doesn't want to rap. He doesn't even want to rap.
That's a great point.
He's not making music.
You don't see Paperboy in recording studios in this show.
Totally.
It's great. I love it.
So he is confronted on those issues in the form of Sierra, and he storms out. And then the episode takes a turn, Andrew. How so?
Yeah. So he says, I can walk home. And he doesn't.
Wait, hold on. Walk home from where? Like, he storms out of where? He storms out of a...
He's at a shopping mall. Or,
he's at a nail salon.
He's at a nail salon.
Getting a pedicure.
Let me just say, I have never related to anyone more than him being super ticklish getting a pedicure. I was... Anyway, continue.
Mm-hmm. He walks half of a parking lot without his shoes on, puts his shoes on, and then decides to walk home. He doesn't seem to be close to home.
He's near woods, one might say.
Right. As he's coming upon the woods, he gets jumped by a couple guys, and to evade them, he goes straight into the woods, and then the rest of the episode is him kind of finding himself and maybe finding strangers in the woods.
Yeah. That's well put. So we do awards on the Recappables. I mentioned this before. It does turn into a pretty emotional episode. So this category is the best scene, which we can define a couple different ways, whether it's kind of the most upsetting, the most moving, the most gut-wrenching scene, no pun intended.
Listen, okay, we have to talk about, so obviously a lot of this episode happens in the woods.
Yeah.
And there are deer in the woods. I grew up in the woods. I know this about the woods. I associate deer with the woods. Yeah. I don't really, I also grew up around a hunt club with a lot of deer that were, let's say, not alive. and there's a very shocking shot of like a dead deer in the woods, and its guts are spilled out.
Yeah.
And I could like smell it. I could like smell. I don't know.
So that was not your best scene. What was your best scene?
So Paperboy is sort of, there's this hermit obviously clinging to Paperboy as he's walking through the woods, and the hermit is very irritating, and he's harassing Paperboy with all these like surreal interrogations and motivational inquiries. And then at one point he sort of drops that, and the hermit just pulls a knife on Paperboy.
Make the decision. Nigga. Keep standing still. You're gone, boy. You're wasting time. And the only people who got time are dead. And if you're dead, I'm gonna take them shoes. And your wallet. And that shirt.
And I just thought that was a great scene because it was like cutting through, like, otherwise the episode feels kind of mysterious and like it's cultivating this mystique about it. And it's a moment where the show, maybe because it's like 27 minutes long as opposed to an hour long, like a lot of other peak TV, it's just sort of like, we're going to cut to the chase and this guy's going to pull a knife on Paperboy and tell him to realize the theme of the episode. Yeah. And I thought it's very
He
endearing.
underlines it very clearly.
He underlines it very clearly. And then he starts threatening to steal his shoes, his wallet, and his shirt. Which, you know, Atlanta does this a lot of kind of putting that thesis statement, if you will, in the mouth of a guest star or someone who's just kind of showed up out of nowhere to be like, and now I will teach you the lesson. But they always then turn it into something completely absurd. Andrew, what was your best scene?
I don't know if I call it my best. It was probably the most upsetting thing I saw is when Paperboy is on his jaunt or whatever you want to call it. Before he gets to the woods, he's sitting on the curb by himself. And he gets a text message from a number that's not saved in his phone. And it just says something like, I've been thinking about you. And it was just this really sad moment. Like, I feel like it distilled his life where he's like, so many people are getting after him and so many people are connected to him, but he's actually not really connected to anyone.
Right.
And it's this moment where he's just like, I don't know who the hell this person is. Maybe it's someone I actually care about. Maybe it's just a stranger. But this sums up my life and I have no meaning.
Yeah. So I had a similar reaction to that moment. And I had not really put together the mom theme throughout the episode until that moment. And obviously his mother starts out the episode, and then she disappears from the apartment pretty quickly, and Ern calls him, and it's the only presence of Ern on this episode is in a phone call. You don't even see him. It's the fourth episode, I think, without a real significant presence from this so-called protagonist of the show, which is just interesting to note. But he calls, and before they get into business stuff, he says, how are you doing today? I wanted to check on you. And so that plus the text that you're mentioning, which kind of had a similar check-in vibe, I guess I wondered if it was like the anniversary of his mother's death, something along that lines. I don't know whether I'm just reading too much into this, but that was the moment for me when it all came together, and I was just like, oh, this is sad. There's a lot going on here. All in a simple text message that they show on a phone.
Yeah. He just doesn't really know who he is. He doesn't know who he wants to be.
Yeah.
And he seems to be really having a hard time coming to that resolution.
For sure. Let's go to our next award, which is the Black Justin Bieber Award for Surrealism. It's named after an episode from the first season when Justin Bieber shows up and he's black. And the reason we're doing this category is because I'm not totally sure how much of this episode is meant to be like, quote, real and how much of this is imagined. So, Andrew, take us back to Wally.
So, yeah, I'm going to piggyback off of Justin's when Wally pulls, I think it's a box. Is it a box cutter?
Yeah, it is.
It is a box cutter.
Okay, yeah. Which also, just that it's not a knife feels right in some way.
Yeah.
But he pulls it, and after kind of underline the themes of the episode, Alfred kind of gets away from his grasp, and then he turns around and Wally is still holding the knife right in place and continuing to go on his rant. And Alfred's just like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Then he eventually just turns around and runs away. And it's just this moment that you're just like, you are taken up into how strange and odd, and you have no idea what's real.
Yes. It's important to note that this Wally character has been following Al through the woods for the better part of a day. Time passes.
Yeah, it goes from daytime to nighttime.
Yes, and he's still there.
Like when he encounters the deer, for instance, it's dark.
Yes.
And that's sort of the shocking thing about it. It's like it's kind of obscured, but at the same time, very immediately obvious that it's a dead deer.
I think I didn't know whether they were different deer, but so there's a daytime shot of a deer as well.
Yeah.
But without the guts.
Seems maybe less guts.
Yeah. So,
not as much guts.
So I don't know whether it's a different deer or whether the deer had an altercation. I don't know.
Yeah. I didn't know if he just ended up walking in circles or what. You know, I don't know how deer guts work. Maybe they come out as the deer is decomposing.
Which is just
you might
say,
have better experience on that.
Yeah, Charity, you have the
I
insights.
don't know. I was just like, is this a Lars von Trier thing? What's going on with the deer? I don't know. You're right. I have no coherent theory of it.
Right.
Of the deer.
Which is just to say that it's a weird wood. It's again, it's a weird wood. You're not totally sure what's going on. Charity, your most surreal moment was somewhat related, I believe.
Well, yeah, okay. So obviously the award is named after Black Justin Bieber, and like what I'm about to award my sort of surrealism honor to is like not as dynamic as that. It's just the fact that once it's like as soon as Paperboy is in the woods, the show feels like it just immediately undergoes this shift in its constitution.
Yes.
And a lot of the cinematography and especially the long overhead shot of the forest, it's this moment where I'm like, what is this episode doing? It's a moment, it lingers long enough on sort of the nature shots and the like very silent shots of Paperboy just sort of walking around like he's suddenly in an annihilation. That it makes you think like, where are we going with this? What is this show? And I mean, that's like a question I ask myself a lot watching like the first and second season of this show, but I just thought it was a neat moment of the episode really making you want it, of really making you sort of like feel a palpable tension of like, what is next for this character? What is next for this guy?
It's clear to me that Al Paperboy is craving some sort of authority in his life and someone who is going to tell him what to do and get his stuff together. And he's presented with a number of those characters over the course of the episode, from Sierra to Wally to his mother. Our last award will kind of get at that idea of all of the people who show up to talk sense into Al in various ways. And it's the best guest star, which I think normally we do MVP. And I just want to go ahead and say I think Brian Tyree Henry is once again the MVP.
Yep.
He is an astounding actor. Andrew, you said it best.
Yeah, he's so good. I think like 2 episodes ago when we were watching Barbershop, we were like, this is his Emmy episode. And actually this one is.
Yeah.
Like he has to do so much, and just the way that he's able to express what he's thinking, and you know what he's thinking. Like when he's about to get jumped by these guys, you can see his thought process in realizing that it's going from this celebrity encounter to this situation where he's about to get jumped. And you see it just by looking at his face. It's just amazing.
Yes. So I continue to be astounded by him. That last scene when he's made peace with his demons. He's accepted the advice of all the elders who come to him, and he agrees to take the selfie with the kid in the convenience mart. And then he starts giving the kid directions on the best way to take the selfie and what face to make. And you can kind of just see his facial expressions in that scene are just astonishing.
Is that the first time we've seen Paperboy's teeth?
It's a great point. I don't know. We can have someone do some
Never
photo
seen this
research on
guy
that.
smile.
Anyway, so with the understanding that Brian Tyree Henry is the MVP, I think we should just talk a little bit about the other guest stars and who kind of most made an impression on you. So, Andrew.
I was a big fan of Sierra.
Yeah.
Although she was extremely rude to her pedicurist.
Yes.
Her manicurist.
That's not how you treat a nail technician.
Yeah. But other than that, I think she, like we said earlier, she actually understands the things that you have to do when you become famous, and that there's no such thing as maintaining authenticity the second you become famous.
Hey, look, no offense, but I ain't in all that fake shit. I'm just trying to stay real. Oh, that's funny? Huh? That shit funny to you?
Kinda. Shit, you on the radio and you making money. You been not real.
And just the fact that she was so real about it, and I think she was one of the first characters to actually like say this to his face. Ern's not saying that, Darius isn't really saying that. I had a lot of respect for that.
Yeah, it's weird that like the pretext of her character is she's fake, and right. It's basically like this, pretty basic but still pretty effective role reversal. Like she's supposedly fake, and he's supposedly real, but he doesn't know what he's doing, and she's like, dude, come on.
Yeah, and he can't take her advice, and that's why he needs Wally.
She definitely sets some plot in motion in the fancy store.
Yeah.
When they are shopping for clothes, and she suggests that Ern, Paperboy's manager, might be able to get him the shoes for free. And Al communicates that is not really how Ern operates, which is the second time that we have heard him give that answer to someone who's slightly more successful than him this season. And maybe even more than that if you count Fake Spotify. So, it's funny, this show has not done plot in a while. The gang has not been together in some time, but this to me was pretty clear foreshadowing of what is to come.
Yeah, I think it's the second time someone has said the phrase level up to Paperboy.
Yeah.
Not good for Ern.
Yeah. And it sort of seems like by the end of the episode that he's ready.
Right. Charity,
who is your favorite guest star?
It's weird. I've watched the episode twice now. And I just, on rewatch, I don't know. There's something about the few seconds we get of Paperboy's mom that seem like they have the source code for the entire episode.
Yes.
Like, despite the fact that she's totally abstracted, she sort of like moves in shadow. And it's the very beginning of the episode, so you're not even necessarily sure. You're not even that certainly attuned to her.
Yes.
Right? Like the first real hard beginning of the episode is when Paperboy's talking to Sierra. But it's, I don't know, like I feel like Paperboy's mom is such an enigmatic presence. Plus in the fact that she like embodies all these questions that you raised, Amanda, of like, what is even happening? Like, what's the level of reality of that scene?
Right.
Like, where is Paperboy's head at? I don't know. It's a very enigmatic, but very low key moment of the episode that I appreciate a lot.
Yeah. And it definitely, the scene that Andrew referenced as soon as he got the text message, I was like, oh, this has to do with his mom. It's definitely flowing through the rest of the episode in terms of both Al's headspace, but also just kind of him wanting answers, him wanting an authority, him wanting someone to tell him what to do. And he eventually finds that person, but that person is in the woods and has a box cutter. And do we think Wally attacked the deer? What am I supposed to think about the deer?
I think deers die every day, Amanda.
Okay.
That's true.
Okay.
I mean, he could have. I mean,
true.
Yeah, the fact that you went from saying the word box cutter to mentioning the deer again, I didn't think of it that way.
Yeah. Well, I didn't either.
I don't want to think of it that way.
I'm sorry. It was pretty gory. I will say this. It did in the woods have elements of a horror movie again, which this show keeps coming back to. Kind of just the experience. Everyday life is a horror movie.
It felt like another reference to Get Out.
Yeah.
Too, in that
Absolutely.
the way that they use deer, a dead deer.
I could be really pretentious with some analysis of the deer if you want me to.
Let's go. Give me 60 seconds on it.
So
go.
think about Wally's ultimatum to Paperboy, where he's like, look, I'm giving you 30 seconds to leave. If you don't leave the woods in the next 30 seconds, I'm just going to kill you and I'm going to steal your shoes and everything. And the deer is a creature that, like, it can exit, but it can never really leave the woods. So it would make sense that Wally would take the box cutter to the deer under the logic that he applies to Paperboy. It's like the deer is this thing that can never leave the woods. The deer is this thing that can never answer Wally's ultimatum.
So the deer is Paperboy if he doesn't level up.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do we think happens next for Al, for Paperboy, and for Ern? Give me your best predictions.
By next, do you mean next episode necessarily, or do you mean in the coming events.
I think that it would be near impossible to predict the contents of any actual episode of Atlanta, which is a testament to Atlanta.
Right.
But I think just kind of, it does seem like they're bringing the ship home a little. We have, I believe, 3 episodes left, and it does seem like the plot machine is coming back into focus a little. So I think, broadly speaking, what do you think?
Well, I think you can separate this season into 3 parts, basically, where the first few episodes were them sort of all not in harmony, but at least together and working through it.
Right.
And then the middle part has been them totally isolated with themselves.
Yes.
And now it seems like we're going to be heading towards the final act where it's them breaking up. And I keep going back to this image from the first teaser for season 2 where they're all walking out of this spotlight and someone pulls Paperboy back into it while the rest of them keep walking. And it's kind of like, you know, maybe Paperboy has to remain in the spotlight, and that means he's leaving the rest of them behind to do so.
Some galaxy brain from Andrew right there.
Yeah.
I see the thing is,
No, I buy it.
I buy it, except for here's my problem.
Okay,
with,
let's hear it.
Earn
Good.
versus Paperboy is that like as kind of immature and like I don't want to say unprofessional, but sort of unaccomplished as Earn is. Paperboy doesn't rap. Paperboy doesn't actually make it. Like it's not. It would be one thing if this were a show where it's like Paperboy's act is operating at a high level, at a Sierra level, and he just doesn't have the classic sort of rapper insecurity of like, oh man, I just don't have the right people around me. I gotta get new people.
Right.
But like neither Earn nor Paperboy are really doing any work. So that to me is what's difficult.
That's true. Although it's a question of do they just not show us
it,
doing
right,
the work?
totally.
Right. Because so much of this has been the things that happen off the scenes, and you know, you learn about the fact that the record went gold because some guy is like screaming at them to take shots with him in a bar. So it seems possible that he might be rapping, and he just hasn't shared that rapping with you, Justin Charity.
That's fair.
But what you're saying is that you don't really think he's earned it quite yet.
No, in the universe of the show, no. Maybe from the viewer, because like I said, I think there's way more interesting character development from Paperboy than from Earn. But just in the logic of the show, in the logic of the show, yeah, they just seem to be. They actually seem very made for each other, just because they both seem incapable of the very nature of their professions. And if anything, it's like Paperboy's success is a fluke. It sort of exists despite. His notoriety exists despite himself.
Right, which explains his discovery. It's a good point. If I've learned anything, it is to not try to predict what happens on this show, even though I just made you guys do that. So I think you could be right. I don't know, I wouldn't want to be Earn right now. I wouldn't want to be Earn.
That's a good way of putting it. I feel like that's the best way of putting it.
Ever since the Helen episode, I do not want to be Earn. So that's where I am. On that note, we will reconvene next week when we might find out what happens to Earn, and we might not, because this is a creative television show. Justin Charity, Andrew Gradadero, thank you.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Dear Guts.
Dear Guts.
My God.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you, everyone. If you want to read more about Atlanta, Justin Charity also wrote a piece about last night's episode that you can read on theringer.com. We will talk to you next week, and until then, be safe in the woods. One last note, our theme song was made by our friends at songfinch.com. Check out Songfinch to turn your stories, memories, and even your feelings into a one-of-a-kind song by professional musicians. It makes the perfect gift for any occasion. That's songfinch.com.